LSU-Bama, Saturday night, still feels weird. I still feel weird about it. This was just such appointment television, such a monstrous build-up for 2 weeks for so long, and it just hasn't been this year. And we've talked about it all week, so I'm not going to belabor the point, but it's still, as I get into another segment where I'm going to talk about it, I'm still kind of shaking myself going, this is just so weird. But I told you in the first segment of the show today that it's not hard for me to come up with a path for LSU to really stay in this game. It's not. It involves them doing some things they haven't done well this year, but I do believe that LSU can run the ball better than they have. I believe they can. I've learned a little bit from Hester and Flynn with some of the film things that they've done in the morning, where some of the things that LSU's done on offense just haven't allowed their offensive linemen a chance to give LSU a hope on the ground. They're in those RPOs where the tackles are backing up and then being asked to try to run block because there might be a pass. So it's just not conducive to getting behind your pads and going. And I think LSU is going to try to do that on Saturday. And I saw them do it for a half against A&M. And now you look at Bama and you look at the fact that Missouri ran on them. And you looked at Vanderbilt ran on them. And you looked at Florida State ran on them. And you looked at Tennessee actually ran it on them. And Georgia ran it a lot on them. And LSU's not as good as those teams running it. But I also told you in the first segment, I told you Friday before the Ole Miss game, LSU's not going to run the ball. They're not. I know Ole Miss has the worst run defense in the SEC. They're not going to run the ball because they can't. I think they can run it a little bit in this game. But with all that being said, you still got to have better from 18. You've got to have better from 18. This is something I mentioned pre-A&M, and there's a modicum of cliche in this analysis that, of course, your quarterback's got to play pretty well. But I need some of last year's Nussmeier, some of the big plays, some of the clutch throws. I think about the fourth quarter against Ole Miss and his ability to escape some pressure and hit Mason Taylor, to obviously the huge throw on the fourth down to Aaron Anderson, trusting Kyron Lacey one-on-one and he makes a play down there. But the LSU converted fourth downs late in that game, and he was just on the money throwing the ball. I think about the good plays he made against South Carolina. They fell behind 17-0 in that game, and he made some throws. He made some throws in that game to get him back in it. Now, you can't have the red zone interception that got called back once he got blocked in the back or what unnecessary roughness or whatever it was. You can't have that play, but the good stuff. I think about the first half in College Station against Texas A&M. Man, he looked good in that half. You got hitting Kyron Lacey on the outside, working the ball to Aaron Anderson down the right sideline. The slant that Anderson took the distance up the middle. The fade route he hit Mason Taylor on that was just gorgeous over the top of the A&M defense. You've got to make some of those throws. And I do truly think that LSU is going to lean heavily on the run on Saturday. I know that sounds ridiculous. Ridiculous. Nobody runs it fewer times than LSU in the Southeastern Conference. They're literally in the 130s in rushing attempts. I think that flips on Saturday. But you are going to have to get good play from Garrett Nussmeier. And involved in that is your two tackles giving you something. And they just haven't for 2 months. At right tackle, you've had breakdown after breakdown. You've had two different guys at left tackle, and you saw in the Texas A&M game, putting a true freshman over there on Cassius Howell is a tough assignment. This is not a Bama defensive front that's got Will Anderson or Tim Williams or Marcel Darius. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Jonathan Allen and, you know the Bama guys that were just terrors. Ashawn Robinson. This is not that. But your tackles are just not at SEC level. So you've got to throw the ball in advantage positions. 1st and 10. 2nd and 2. 2nd and 5. 3rd and 1. Where you can't allow those guys to pin their ears and come at you. You give up 7 sacks against A&M. And your quarterback is aware of that. As much as you can preach mental toughness and you can say you've got to stand in there, when you drop and try to make plays down the field and you don't have the confidence that your guys can hold up, it makes it tough. And last year, despite LSU's putrid running ability, just awful running the ball, last year, Garrett Nussmeier had the confidence when he took the snap, 3rd and 11, 1st and 10, 2nd and 11, like whatever. They're going to block. I've got time. Let me look. And this year, I don't see that from him. I see shoulders shrugging and ducking down. I see a guy that's just not as confident. And for good reason. They're not as good. And if you keep trying to throw the ball and you get in bad down distances, it will be terrible. Because that stadium, despite what everyone wants to say, that, oh, it's a wine and cheese crowd, it's an entitled crowd, it's not as loud as Tiger Stadium, it's not as loud as Neyland, it's not as loud as Jordan-Hare. It's loud. I've been in there. It's loud. And that fan base feels comfortable and confident with that coach right now. It can change. It can change tomorrow. But right now, they do. It'll be loud in there. It'll be difficult to get things done on 3rd and distance. So it's got to be, you've got to stay ahead of the change, but Nussmeier's got to play good. No turnovers. You can't turn the ball over. LSU's margin in this game are too tight. Yesterday, I did a whole segment on how to win in the margins. One of the big things was red zone. One of the things I said that was so obvious was that turnovers. LSU is not good enough to lose the turnover battle 3-1 or 2-0 or even 1-0 tomorrow and have a real good chance to win the game. They're not good enough. You're going to have to play a clean game. And you can. Every single season, there is a game that you play your best. Maybe LSU's was Clemson. Maybe it was. That's the best they're going to get. But I still hold out hope that there's something in that offense with the quarterback who last season threw for more yards than anyone in the history of the program outside of Joe Burrow. There's something in there. There's now a healthy Aaron Anderson. There's a matchup problem in Trey'Dez Green. There's the speed of Barryon Brown, and maybe Chris Hilton gets involved. There's something in there to hit a play. It starts on the ground for LSU tomorrow. I do believe that. I think you've got a head coach and now a play caller that truly believe that. You've got a altered practice periods with 9-on-7 this week of running the ball. They're going to do that. But you're going to have to make some plays. And it may have to come in the red zone and it may have to come in big plays. But you've got to have your quarterback have his best game. And I did a segment 2 weeks ago talking about how disappointed Garrett Nussmeier probably is in his final season here to this point. He had a nice first year productivity-wise, and you come back to chase a title, to chase history at a place where you can make it, to do something that Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels did and, contend for a Heisman Trophy or contend for a championship. And that's all gone. He's not playing in Atlanta for the SEC championship. He's not going to the college football playoff. He's not winning the Heisman Trophy. He could move into second all-time in yards passing and will if he stays healthy. But this may be the game that you look back on and go, oh, that was when Nussmeier made those huge plays and they went to Tuscaloosa and won. Maybe a game you talk about like that. There are plenty of guys that have got games that you talk about that didn't win championships. Josh Reed didn't win any championships. I mean, he won the SEC, I guess. But you talk about his day against Alabama. Like Leonard Fournette didn't win anything of substance, but you talk about that day against Auburn, that day against Ole Miss. Maybe this is a day where Garrett Nussmeier hits some big plays, doesn't turn it over, makes some huge throws, makes one play late in the game to win it. Because that's the point. If they can run the ball and they can win time of possession, like I talked about in the first segment, maybe it comes down to one play. And maybe it's like that play he made to Aaron Anderson on 4th down against Ole Miss. And maybe we talk about that with Garrett Nussmeier. Maybe he makes a throw in overtime, like Jaden did in the 2-point conversion, like Jamarcus did in Tuscaloosa in 2005. Maybe. That's what you've got to cling to. 18's got to be really good on Saturday. And I think there's a reasonable chance that Michael Van Buren gets some snaps. I think there's a reasonable chance Juwan Johnson's involved in some direct snaps. I think they're going to do some creative things to try to run the ball. But that doesn't mean Garrett Nussmeier is going to play 60% of the game. I think he's going to play 95% of the game. He's got to make some plays. You can't go to Tuscaloosa and win without your quarterback figuring it out. And I'm not telling you he's got to be like the last two guys who have won for LSU against Alabama. They both won Heismans. He doesn't have to be that. He's got to get some help from the ground game and make some crucial plays late. And that's you got to have it from Garrett Nussmeier if you're going to win this game on Saturday night in Bryant-Denny Stadium. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.